So then we had our 8 children. We had our first daughter, Loris, and we lived in Hunter, Utah at that time. And after 4 years, we moved to California for Max to get a job there. And when we got there, we met a couple in our ward who had just adopted a little girl. And because we had not had any children after 4 years, they told us how they went about doing it, and so we followed their way, and we were able to adopt our second child, Valerie. And she was born in a hospital in San Jose, California. And when she was 3 days old, we picked her up and brought her home on Halloween night. And it was such a joy. We were so thrilled to be able to have our second child. And then while we were in California, Max was called to be a bishop. And we purchased a home, and they actually changed the boundary lines so they could get him inside the boundary lines to be the bishop of the Milpitas ward there. And we lived there about 2.5 years, and then he needed to get more education. I'll probably tell you all about that. And so we moved back to Utah, and Max started going to BYU. We rented a little tiny house on BYU campus. It's where the Marriott Center now stands. It was called Y-View Village. And all the time he went to school, we just had the 2 children, and I worked. I worked as a secretary at BYU in purchasing. And he graduated with his bachelor's degree, and we thought it would be good if we tried to get a home, so we looked around and we found this house. And he'd started working for BYU, so we had that as to be able to finance the house, and we would never have been able to finance this house if it hadn't have been that our home in California had sold. And so that gave us a down payment to get into this house. And so he continued going to school, working for his master's degree. And we still hadn't had any other children of our own, and so we had the opportunity to adopt our 3rd child, Terry. And so I flew to California to pick her up in Redlands, California. And that was just another very, very special day to bring that little baby home and meet our family at the airport, get off the airplane. And then, a year later, we were expecting our second child, our second natural child. And then our children just kept coming. So we had Loris, and then Valerie, and then Terry, and then we had Marcy, and then Tom, Nathan, Jeremy, and Catherine. So that's our family. Well, our first child, it was quite a trial because she came 5 weeks early, and we are wondering if it was because before she was born, I had gone out and lifted the heavy garage door to our home that we lived in, and we don't know if that started anything, but then I had to go to the hospital, and I was in labor for 30 hours.
36 hours.
36 hours. And the nurses thought that he was going to be the first father they were going to lose. But, so the labor went on, and then it stopped, and then it started again, and then they actually took me to have the baby without me being aware. So I had Loris, and she was 4 pounds, 9.5 ounces. And when I came to after the birth, I didn't even know I had had her. And anyway, it was such a blessing. And the miracle of birth has just been the most marvelous thing in our lives thereafter. With each child, we just have been so thrilled to have each child come to our home and know that they were all of them sent from Heavenly Father. And we cherish our children. We cherish the times when they were growing up. All of the, their young little lives, the babies. I loved babies, and I didn't ever want to stop having babies, but there came a time when we needed to do that. And we love our children. Just hopefully they know that we love them just so much. And our desire is that we have them forever.
Something about Terry. The adoption.
I thought I had said something. You go ahead.
Well, what I was leaning toward is we were approached by the general counsel of the university. I was then an employee of the university and had become acquainted with the general counsel, and he indicated that through he had a sister, as I recall, or a cousin or someone in California that on occasion encountered these circumstances where adoptions were available. And so he wondered if we would be interested in adopting a second child, which we were. And it was interesting, we had just purchased this home, and we didn't know how in the world, we were ever going to furnish it, but we had the house. And the living room we're sitting now had no furniture in it for 3 years. But we asked our children, the two of them, Catherine or Valerie and Loris, how they felt about it. Would they rather have Christmas or would they rather have a baby? And they wanted the baby. So, of course, that's what we wanted, but we wanted it to be a family decision. So we went ahead with that adoption. But the thing that was wonderful in my view was that following that, I was also very well acquainted with the gentleman who was the head of just university education, and I can't think of the name they had on it at the time, but it was just kind of an official position where he handled all the students that didn't have a major declared and whatnot, and through his office would counsel with them and that sort of thing. So I was very well acquainted with him. He was the patriarch in our stake. I was then probably serving as bishop or stake presidency. So at any rate, I knew him very well. And he invited us, he's a patriarch. He invited us to his home where he wanted to give us a special blessing. Myrna had been told when she was younger in her patriarchal blessing that she would become the mother of sons and daughters. At that point, we had the 3 daughters. And he just was such a kindly gentleman. He wanted to give her an additional blessing, which he did, and promised her that the original promise would be realized. She would indeed become the mother of sons and daughters. So, shortly after we had adopted Terry, we found that we were expecting. It was a surprise to both of us. But we were able to enjoy that process over and again till we had our 8 children.
Okay, it was that we only had 2 daughters before we had the blessing from Patriarch
Did I say 3? I'm sorry.
From Patriarch Wetton.
How did you choose your children's names?
That's interesting.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, we named our sons after prophets. We have a Thomas Smonson and we have Willa Thomas. And he was also, my mission president was a Thomas. So there was a dual interest there. Nathan is named after the prophet Nathan. And the tremendous stand he took, even against the king. And Jeremy, not when you hear a lot in the scripture, but there was a prophet named Jeremy. And he likewise was touted for his bravery, his honesty. So that's how we named our sons. Our daughters, Loris was named after a young woman that we knew in Australia, that I knew. And she was my age, but she was an absolute stalwart. She held that branch together. In her youth, she was just an example of doing everything right. And because of that, I don't know that I had any feelings beyond that, but it was a pretty name, I thought. A little different than what you'd expect to see, but that's how she got her name.
The other three, Valerie, Terry, Marcy, we just named them because we liked the names. And Catherine.
We both liked the name
Yeah.
Catherine.
Just because we liked him.
Were either of you named after someone, or is there a story behind your names?
Well, I have my father's names. He was Ernest Kenner Raisor, and I'm an Ernest Max Kenner Raisor, so I have all of his names given and surnames. So, and I'm not sure why my parents named me that way they did. My oldest sister, Roberta, she was a Kenner, Roberta Kenner Raisor, and I'm a Max Kenner Raisor. So we're the only two. And our other siblings, we have a brother and sister who are fraternal twins, and they have a W, but it's without a period, so there's no name associated with the W. It's just Jane W. Raisor Bigley and J. W. Raisor, so. Now my mother's maiden name was Williams, so the assumption is that they intended for that to apply, but.
Or her name, Wendella.
Yeah, that's true. My mother's name. So it's hard to tell.
Well, when I was born, there was a movie actress named Myrna Lloyd. And that must be why she named me that. And when we were on our mission in Salt Lake, we actually had 3 Myrnas. And we took a picture of us 3 Myrnas. Because that's a name that you don't hear anymore.
And people don't know how to
They don't know how to
pronounce
say it. We have all kinds of salesmen, people in stores. Marina, Rihanna, they don't know how to say it. Anyway.
Really, we love our kids. And we would do anything we can for them. And we think they know that. We hope they do.